Death Blow. Death Blow. Death Blow. Death Blow.
Welcome guys to a new episode of Death Blow Podcast. Subscribe, like and share and click on the bell to be notified when a new video is on my channel. Instagram, Facebook and TikTok for more videos, news and much more. Spotify and Apple Podcasts to listen the audio version of every episode. Death Blow Podcast has even a website that you can find in the description. Today we will talk about a band that I even talked in the first season, and these are VENOM. Their story begins circa 1978 in Newcastle Upon Tyne, a city located in the northeast of England, specifically in the county of Tyne and Wear. Jeffrey Dunn, born on 22nd April 1961, took his first steps into the world of music with his friend Dave Rutherford on guitar, Dean Hewitt on bass, Dave Blackman on vocals, and Paul Burke, later replaced by Chris Mercator, on drums. Initially, their name was Guillotine. Jeffrey, known internationally as Mantas, recounts the origins of this band here. You know what it is? I got this question a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, so when you were in Guillotine, and I went, hold on. That band never existed. Do you know what it is? It's a Cronos season. You know that Cronos joined a Judas Priest cover band. What a load of shit. You know, we were already called VENOM when he joined. He was the last person to join. For many, the name Conrad Land, known as Cronos, is very familiar. Conrad was born in Kensington on 15 January 1963. Cronos grew up in London, and as you know, many famous rock bands were from the town, so even this served to enthuse him to start a musical career. In the early 70s, his family moved to Newcastle, and here he started to attend guitar lessons at school, and the teacher gave him a possibility to use all instruments that were there. During his school days, he played in various bands such as Dwarf Store and Album Grecum. Why did he decide to call himself Cronos? He explained better here. The name Cronos comes from Greek mythology and was one of the first gods, the original Titans, the generation that preceded Zeus and the Olympian gods. He was the son of Uranus and Gaia. I wanted to come up with a stage name that had some meaning or connection to myself. And as my birth sign is Capricorn and my planet is Saturn, then the god of Saturn is Cronos. For the other band members, they didn't really put much thought into it. They just took their names from the Satanic Bible, from the infernal names. It seems they just took their first names, therefore sounded cool, without giving it much thought. About his musical influences, he revealed this. I started listening to music at quite an early age. Elvis was my hero. Then I moved on to David Bowie, T-Rex, Status Quo and Led Zeppelin. But my serious hardcore life-changing experience came with Sex Pistols. People like me needed to rebel. We needed to stick a middle finger up to the establishment and say, F you. We have our own ideas, our own rules. I told people that Johnny Rotten was my dad, even though he would only have been about 6 when I was born. And I used to tell people that I was the drummer in the Clash, even though I couldn't play drums. But I was a member of the Charm Army, hence the Doc Martens I always wear, and we used to roam the streets getting into drunken fights for the hell of it. Them were the days. In 1979, he started working at Impasse Studios. This is what he said. I applied for a job on a training scheme for an audiovisual engineer, and I went for an interview at Impasse. This was in 1979, and there was no need at this point. I trained as an assistant engineer and tape operator, which was a good laugh. The senior engineer used to work in the studio and skin up a joint or 20, and we get better before the band of the day came in. This was very normal then. And about his first steps in the musical field, he revealed, I just thought it was such fun that you could kind of make it up as you went along. And considering I've been acting in plays from a very young age, learning and memorizing the whole script, which is great fun and hard work. I was totally relaxed on a stage in front of an audience, but with acting you have to read other people's lines, so playing music was like a spontaneous outburst. We just jammed on any riffs we could come up with and shouted out the words on the spur of the moment. Those were good times. Cronos knew a girl that was working in a local burger bar and went to her house. It's here that happened the most important meeting between him and Jeffrey Dunn, Mantas. This is what Jeffrey revealed. It was at her best friend's house that she introduced me to Conrad, who was sitting on the sofa. So he was the last piece of the puzzle that came in. This pissed me right off. But Guillotine, Judas Priest tribute? Nah. You know what it is? We once tried to play the Reaper, and we failed miserably, because we couldn't fucking play it. It was as simple as that. The singer that we had in at the time, Clive Archer, was a massive Judas Priest fan, as I was, but Guillotine was a name I had bouncing around in my head. The band was never called Guillotine though. It never came to fruition. There was never a logo or anything designed, nothing like that. So it's a complete fallacy, it just made up in people's minds. The magic started immediately, and we're ready to play together. Dave Blackman and Chris Mercator were replaced by another famous drummer known as Anthony Bray Abaddon, born on 17 September 1960 in Jarrow, near Newcastle, and a vocalist, Clive Archer, and his nickname was Jesus Christ. That was a friend of Abaddon at the time. Abaddon revealed about his first meeting with Clive here. I had an apprenticeship in the factory where my dad worked. That's where I met the guy who became Venom's first singer. Clive Archer and I also met Eric Cook, who was the band's longtime manager. We apprenticed together when we were 16, and all we talked about, everybody there had long hair, and all we talked about was the bands at the time, and the main venue here at the time was called the City Hall, which is still there. It fits about 2,000 or 3,000 people. About the Guillotine Venom era, Mantas revealed this in one interview. I had learned a movable power chord and the first position of the pentatonic scale, and that was it. I was trying to write my own songs, and the first song I ever wrote was Red Light Fever. So I think it was just a case of what we did to those songs when we got in the studio together as a collective. We were always sort of three separate entities, we never really gelled, so whatever I did with the guitar riffs and Cronos did with the bass and then Abaddon fumbling along at the drums, that's what it became. And everybody says, oh yeah, they've got this punk attitude. I was never into punk, and I wrote the majority of the early material. Why did they choose the name Venom? Mantas says here, there was a guy who used to hang out at Kev Devlin, I believe his name was. He used to hang out with the band at rehearsals. We used to rehearse in a church hall in the west end of Newcastle. Then we used to rehearse in an art center, a Newcastle city center called Spectral Arts. And this Kev Devlin had a motorbike. I think it was maybe his bike that was on the back of Black Metal that I was sitting on doing the fucking 80s show. I think it might have been, I'm not sure, certainly it wasn't mine, but it was him who came up with the name. We were thinking about names, and no one really suggested any name, to be perfectly honest, and at the rehearsal, he was just sitting there and said, what about Venom? And it was like, that dude. Yeah, and it was as quick as that. On 15 February 1980, Venom had their first gig with Clive on vocals, and it was in Wallsend. In the same year, they made two other gigs, one in Newcastle and one in Hayward. With this lineup, they recorded a demo entitled Demon, recorded at Impulse Studios in Newcastle on 29 April 1980. This demo contains only 3 songs: Angel Dust, Raise the Dead, and Red Light Fever, engineered by Mickey Sweeney. The lyrics of this demo are clear: darkness, drugs, and death. In Angel Dust, the theme of drugs is dealt with. Angel Dust is a famous drug known as phencyclidine. which gives euphoria and hallucinations. In Angel Dust, one lives life by taking risks, living in extremes. In Raise the Dead, the theme is more about resurrecting the dead and relying on the figure of the evil one when doing so. Having the power to raise the dead gives one a feeling of power and also being able to defeat death, practicing necromancy by having one's mind controlled by dark creatures. In the song Red Light Fever, the theme focuses on lust and prostitution, the concept of paying money to have some company. Perhaps a more rock than metal lyric, but dark nonetheless. The losing oneself in earthly pleasures without caring about it. Venom's unmistakable style is very similar to the Motorhead school. Clive's voice is dead scratchy and with a scream to make everything shake. Angel Dust shows from the start that it has potential in terms of musical structure. It also reminds me of other rock bands like Black Sabbath and others. Mantas solo, very well done. Abaddon's drumming is never too fast but well articulated, reminiscent of early Kiss. Raise the Dead, very nice guitar and bass that create a catchy rhythm. Clive Archer's voice also here very brutal, but obviously not like the future black metal genre. A simple rhythm, not too far from rock and roll. Certainly as a rhythm it was a breath of fresh, dark air in those years. The third track, Red Light Fever, starts with a very well done guitar riff, reminiscent of songs like Welcome to Hell. Clive's voice always very dark but very simple. Metal was just emerging in those years with punk and the first metal bands. I noticed the influence of punk in these songs, like the Sex Pistols, although far from the classic genre. The drum beat is simple, there are no overly difficult passages. All in all, Demon is a flowing demo which has a simple sound with guitar, bass and drums, a structure with simple chords. After they recorded this one, Clive was not appearing very often during rehearsals, and this was a clear sign that he didn't want to be part of the band anymore. This is what Mantas revealed about Clive Archer's leaving. I think the reason that Clive left the band was because of the way the band was going. I don't think he was too happy with the over satanist side of it. He was a horror film fan, he was a fan of Priest. I've got a lot of time for Clive. He is a really nice guy, and we're still in contact today. Clive was one of the few people that at the end of the 70s and the beginning of 80s of using face paint, famous today in black metal bands. It's exactly here that Cronos started to be a valid singer to replace him. Cronos tried to sing some songs meanwhile he was playing the bass, and it's here that Mantas asked him to sing on the song Live Like an Angel, Die Like a Devil. And the result was awesome. 1981. These three guys from Newcastle that were having simple jobs at the time, Mantas, a petrol pump attendant, Abaddon, a steel factory worker, and Cronos working at the studio, decided to write some material for their new first full-length album. Mantas revealed this: "We were never known as the greatest musicians on the planet, but I think what we had was, call it youthful arrogance or whatever, but we just went in and did whatever we did when we went in the studio way back then. We had no experience whatsoever, and Welcome to Hell, that album, that was actually my first attempt at writing songs. There was no rewrites, there was no rearrangement, we had no Pro Tools, Cubase, Logic. We were given 3 days to get in the studio and just do it. When is the time to record this album, Neat Records has to cooperate with Steve Thompson, that was a pop producer, not exactly the right figure to produce a band like Venom. What is Welcome to Hell? It's a collection of demos. It wasn't a true album. They published underneath one single released on 19 April 1981 called In League with Satan, Live Like an Angel, Die Like a Devil, always recorded at Impulse Studios. The label was surprised about the copies they were selling, so decided to contact Venom for more songs. Cronos revealed this: "The Venom sound came about more through time constraints than anything else. We only spent 3 days on Welcome to Hell and about 7 days at the studios for black metal. This is all the time that Nit would allow us in the studio actually. I always had more to do with the production than anyone else, and that was because I had the studio experience. I was there from dawn to dusk, from the first equipment being brought into the building to the final tapes being taken out. I would work alongside the studio engineer for the recordings, but preferred to mix without anyone else there. The studio equipment was old, and we didn't have anything like SSL, programmable desks. In June 1981, they played at the Quay Club in Hepburn. Here they blew the electric mains several times, and it was their last show on a social club. They had to play on 25th September at Mayfair Suite in Newcastle, but this last one was cancelled. Talking about Welcome to Hell, full-length album, it was always recorded at Impulse Studios and was published under Nit Records on December 1st, 1981, produced by Kit Nicol and VENOM, 11 songs in total. 6 songs on one side, 5 songs on the other side. Artwork made by Magda. Analyzing the lyrics of this record, the main themes are the evil one and everything to do with him, trusting the darkness and being overwhelmed by it, becoming the deceivers, confusing the minds of believers and others. The concept of madness as diversity and not as a disease, creating a new world with new rules, being in hell and being well in it, not being overwhelmed by what is bad, killing death as an exorcism of it, burning lost souls, murder, a man who kills children with a knife at midnight, a sick and dark mind that will not stop his fury, axe in hand and desire to kill many more people. VENOM make it clear that every kind and polite-looking man can hide the dark secrets, the poison that clouds the human soul, a sick love that takes and does not return, being blinded by desire and being overwhelmed by lust, living life with the risk of dying, never stopping in the face of difficulties. The paradox used by VENOM in this song is very clear. To live like an angel is to be good, but only when necessary. Die like a devil, on the other hand, means to be ready for anything, to never give up and to kill if necessary, so as to become an enemy. Witching hour, known for the period of time when witches are most active to do magic. Hear the call of the moon and the ringing bell. All hell breaks loose with the birth of Satan's son. Reference to the city of Sodom, the city of self-destruction, with rituals, degradation and loss of inner self, killing of children, torture and pain, a real hell on earth. About the music, Sons of Satan starts off fast, structure-wise. The Motorhead bass is very present, the drums are slightly faster than their demo. Cronos' voice is much darker, similar to the punk genre. The change of pace towards the middle of the song is really well done. It gives you the impression of being inside a satanic ritual, something dark that manifests itself within the song. Mantas' solo is something phenomenal. Cronos' bass sound is very dark and it's really well done. Chaotic ending that already conveys the idea of being in hell. Welcome to Hell, well-known track, is the anthem per excellence of the black metal genre. Cronos' scratchy voice is really incredible. It is not a fast song, but still contains very catchy chords. The riff written by Mantas is still very important today. The female voice in the middle of the song represents the ritual that starts with the fast drums and the real chaos of the other instruments. The bass is very punk. It draws inspiration from the Sex Pistols and other bands of the genre. Schizoid, the bass is very punk. Cronos' fast, shrieking vocals are very Motorhead and punk. The guitar makes simple chords, but they were really a novelty at the time. The chord scale is very good and so is the solo. Excellent tempo changes throughout the song. Mayhem with Mercy instrumental track with guitar arpeggio and synthesizer effects. The calm before the storm, a macabre storm awaits. Poison starts with a guitar riff very similar to the other songs, but still not overly repetitive. Cronos' voice very punk. The guitar and bass have a very simple structure. It is not the technique that counts here, but rather the emotion that comes through. Very hard rock in certain passages and many chord changes. The only flaw is that the recording is not 100% stereo, but this is due to the fact that this album was recorded in 1981 and there was not the instrumentation of today. Live Like an Angel, Die Like a Devil, the best song in my opinion. It contains this very hard rock, heavy metal guitar passage mixed with punk influences. Cronos, with his always very angry and screaming voice, sings an anthem of rebellion. Faster than other songs, excellent instrumental piece with well-structured and executed chords and solos. Very Motorhead album like Ace of Spades, Fast and Mean. Contains a spectacular riff this song, excellent. Witching Hour starts with the bass, a serious sound with screams in the background and the guitar starting with the classic riff. This song contains a nice chord scale, but I think there is a drum mistake in this song, and yet it is one of the most loved albums even by the new generation coming into metal. Such an evil and dark sound performed by some bands that tried to go further and further in shocking the audience and the believers. 1000 Days in Sodom starts off slow and not overly fast. Here it goes more into the barely perceptible 70s prog rock. Mantas guitar tries some new effects with the solo, same for the bass. They try their hand at new effects, perhaps more psychedelic if you can call them that. Angel Dust rearranged for the album version, faster and louder, very much punk and violent. Red Light Fever opens with a calm intro and then Chaos, Fury. The guitar starts with his very hard rock riff, very reminiscent of the first Motorhead album, this sound. Always fast as a song, and it is the meeting of prog rock, punk, hard rock. A real mix of these three genres. This song is also from the demo rearranged for the album version. About this LP, this is what Abaddon said. Yeah, we were going in to do for a single or a demo. I'm gonna carry my drums up 8 flights of stairs up to the studio. The studio was way up in the roof, so I was carrying these fucking bass drums up the stairs. I regret being a drummer. The guy came out of the office and he said, "Alright, how many songs have you got?" We were like, well, we are doing an EP, so we got 3 recorded and we are working on a 4th song, you know. If we work all weekend, then we'll get 4 done. He said, well, you need to do an album. We were like, alright, he says, so you've got 2 days, you've got Saturday and Sunday. I'll give you Monday as well. So we'll have 3 days to do Welcome to Hell, and we had to write songs in there. Jeff had some riffs, I had some lyrics, Conrad had some lyrics, and we just had to pull it all together. When we got to black metal, a year later, we were royally allowed 6 days. About the recording of the drums, especially on the track In League with Satan, Abaddon revealed this. It was basically because I was brand new at the whole thing. I didn't realize that the snare was so integral to the rhythm work. For me, I bought this big drum kit that had loads of toms, and I just thought, well, that's where I'm gonna go. I've got 2 bass drums, I've got 4 or 5 toms, 2 big floor toms. I am just gonna get stuck in around here, and I didn't realize you're supposed to play 4/4 and a bass drum on the 1 and a snare on the 2, and a bass drum on 3 and a snare on the 4. You know, the snare didn't really interest me at that first recording session. 3rd June 1982. Venom played live for the first time outside UK. This gig was in Poperinge, Belgium. They played in front of 3,000 people. In August of the same year, they released a single called Bloodlust. They even shot a music video for this one. It contains 2 songs only, Bloodlust and In Nomine Satanas. Sounds a magazine wrote a review and made it the single of the week. Let's analyze the lyrics of these two songs. Blue Lust talks about the figure of the vampire who feeds on the blood of poor innocent victims, including women and children, to the point of leaving them to die, while In Nomine Satanas means in the name of Satan and deals with the theme of hell, with demons ready to achieve their goal of destruction. War with the legion of demons, letting hatred and anger dominate, singing odes to Satan, evoking inner torment in human beings. Blue Lust contains fast drums and a very punk-like structure. Cronos' voice is hellish, the drums are faster and so are the solos. Their style is always a cross between punk and metal. It contains a nice guitar scale. Venom's wild hell singing proves in this song to be more alive than ever. In Nomine Satanas starts off normally, not too fast. Chords reminiscent of Judas Priest or heavy metal bands. It contains an excellent guitar scale and fine tuning between all the instruments. Cronos' infernal screaming voice seems to recite a satanic ritual. I must say that on an atmospheric level they really succeeded in expressing terror. After that, Venom decided to record their next album called Black Metal, published always underneath records on 1st November 1982 and recorded at Impulse Studios in Wallsend. Produced always by Kit Nicol, cover art by Cronos. Black Metal was recorded in only 6 days. It contains 11 tracks in total, 5 on one side and 6 on the other side. The term black metal started with Cronos that revealed this. I remember sitting in the interview and we were asked, "Where do you guys fit in with all that?" I said, "Well, we certainly don't fit in there. If that's heavy metal, then we are not. We are power metal, death metal, thrash metal, speed metal, black metal." I just started spitting all these other types of terms out straight right off the top of my head and it stuck. We used to just call ourselves power metal back in the day. And he had the ear. We came across this MTV and FM radio thing and they are playing what they call heavy metal, which we disregard. We are not heavy metal, we are black metal. The lyrics of black metal deal with dark themes, playing the satanic melody par excellence. If Satan were a musician, he would play with Venom. To be savages, to be creatures of the night, to strive for goals, spells and rituals, being Lucifer's servant, letting yourself go and transgressing all limits, mutants and strange creatures of hell, being undead and seeing humans weeping in pain, summoning the dead but no one can hear the voice, bleeding and listening to the call of the dead, raising the dead with a tormented mind and a bleeding body. But not only satanic and esoteric themes are discussed, but also strange fantasies about a teacher and being overwhelmed by lust. Cronos revealed that it was a 12-bar song about fantasies on new school teachers. There is also an inner reflection in this album, not wanting to be born and no longer being part of this world, remaining in hell, sacrifices to Satan and his invocation with chalice and knife, drinking blood, witchcraft and criticism of the figure of the Almighty. If it's true that he can save lives, why doesn't he? Then he speaks of the Hungarian countess Elizabeth Bathory, who killed the virgins in her castle and bathed in their blood. About the arrangements, the beginning of the black metal album starts with a not bad guitar riff. Cronos' voice very punk, the drums are faster than in Welcome to Hell and have a solid punk metal bass. Heavy metal and black metal were taking shape. Nice scale in the song Black Metal is reminiscent of blues in some ways but very distant. The solos are also unique on this album. Cronos' vocals are shouted out and are much meaner. It contains simple, non-technical but dark riffs. On a technical level, the improvement in musical structure is noticeable. There is more conviction and more confidence. Venom show that they are not shy but show the true side of themselves and are not afraid. In the track Buried Alive, Cronos' vocals are demonic, made in this way to make the whole thing satanic and infernal. An arpeggio can be heard in the distance in this track. Very beautiful this one of my favorites. Cronos' voice is a whisper, like the evil monster. Very nice chords in this song. A real wicked track. Cronos manages to convey the spirit on this album. There is always a Motorhead style touch throughout the album. It has many songs that have a punk influence. In the track Teacher's Pet, there is a fusion of punk and blues rock, a different track than the others. The beauty of black metal is that it conveys strength and rebellion, a real anthem to rebel, to not remain silent in the face of life's injustices. Sacrifice contains a beautiful punk-style chord scale and is another fabulous track. Countess Battery is another really good one, with a chord sequence that works and manages to capture the audience attention, as does the whole album. Not bad for an album that sold 25,000 copies only in Europe, a huge success for many years. And it's all for this episode. Let me know if you want a part 2 of Venom in the future. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share my videos and click on the bell to receive more news from Death Blow Podcast, Instagram, Facebook and TikTok for more infos and news, Spotify and Apple Podcasts to listen the audio version. See you soon guys!